National Guard veteran. He is the CEO of the Chamberlain Network. That's a nonprofit that mobilizes veterans to defend democracy through civic engagement, through education. He also led veteran advocacy at Human Rights First and served in Iraq in 2011. Chris, we thank you for joining us. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I guess, just you are an Army National Guard veteran, and this is the thing that nobody wants to happen, the worst possible thing that could happen. Can we just get your reaction to what we've learned about today?
Yeah, this is, you're quite right, the worst possible thing that could happen. I mean, these are our folks, these service members who were in the West Virginia National Guard are just out doing their job, doing their duty. Many of them, don't want to be there. I was walking through U Street a couple weeks ago, and I ran into a staff sergeant, and I just said, "Hey, how are you finding DC?" And the first thing he said to me was, "Well, I just got married." There is a real sense in many of these Guard units that they have better things to do with their lives. They don't want to be here. They want law enforcement and local agencies to run DC, and to see them targeted by this horrible actor. Is really a travesty, and my thoughts and prayers are with both the service members and their families as we go into the holiday.
Yeah, and Chris, as you've been talking with some of the service members who have been deployed here to the district, what have they been telling you about sort of the climate? Did they feel like they were being targeted at all because of the political rhetoric and obviously the objection by some residents to them being here?
I think that what we've been communicating to residents and to members of the National Guard that we all know that this is not the best use of their time, that they should be back home in their states and in their communities doing the jobs that they signed up to do. And so when I talk to members of the Guard, especially in D.C., they're wondering, why am I not at home? Why am I not back in Ohio? Why am I not back in my home district trying to get ready for snowstorms and for hurricanes and for wildfires? I haven't gotten a sense that members of the Guards particularly felt like they were targeted. I think many members of the DC community has gone out of their way to try to, in some way welcome the members of the Guard, knowing that they don't want to be here, that their mission really isn't to do this type of law enforcement work. I am very concerned about what this will do to that relationship between members of the community and the National Guard. So definitely keeping an eye on that, and working with the folks that I've been talking to over the past number of months to try to make sure that relationship is still strong.
Chris, that's such an important point you bring up, and it also sort of underscores this broader concern about the risks faced by Guardsmen who are on duty in public-facing law enforcement roles, and really adding some urgency to the debate around whether we need to have Guardsmen going into American cities patrolling American citizens. Yeah,
I mean the motives of the shooter are still unknown, but what we do know is that these shootings would not have happened had these troops not been brought into D.C., had local law enforcement or federal law enforcement been empowered and equipped to do whatever it is that they think the National Guard should do. There are over 1 million there's nearly 1 million peace officers in this country, and there's over 100,000 federal law enforcement officers. There's no reason why we needed to bring in National Guard units to escalate the situation in D.C.
Yeah, Chris, I'm thinking of members of the Guard who sign up to do this sort of life-saving work, or this life-saving work, I should say. And give us some perspective here. How often are they deployed? And generally, when they are, how long are they out for that deployment? Because I'm thinking of these Guardsmen here, hundreds of them who have been stationed in D.C. since August now. Is this typical in terms of the length of a deployment?
Yeah, so I joined the Army National Guard in 2004 after 9/11, and many of the folks who I served with, I was in the New York Army National Guard and then transferred to the Virginia National Guard, were on federal missions supporting work after the terrorist attacks of 9/11. Those were long-term missions. You might have remember seeing them, around town, and certainly in New York City. Many of them are still actually there. But the average tour for a domestic mission is quite limited. You think of snowstorms, you're out for a couple weeks, or a hurricane, a couple weeks like that. The fact that this has gone on since August and is likely to continue through February was the latest that I heard, and will probably continue on further after that. This is abnormal, and it's especially unprecedented given the fact that many of these troops are not from the district. And these folks who were targeted were from West Virginia, but there are troops from Ohio. That is something that has never happened in I think in living memory, where you have out of state, out of district troops being brought in to an unfamiliar territory. And frankly, this is something that we have been warning about, is that when you have members of the military, members of the National Guard who come into a new environment, they're unfamiliar with the situation, there are lots of risks that are posed here, and which is why we say if you have a policing mission that you need to carry out in the district, it needs to be done by law enforcement. We cannot bring people from outside of D.C. to do that work here.
And yet we hear that the president wants to deploy another 500 National Guard members from other parts of the country to the city because of what happened here. Does that give you pause?
Yeah, unfortunately, the president's only response to these issues is to escalate. We saw that in L.A. We've seen that across the country when he perceives a law and order. He wants to escalate, and he wants to use the military as a show of force. The reality is if you really want to solve crime, if you really want to bring justice to these service members who were attacked, and you think that law enforcement is the way to do that, then you need to bring in the people who are trained to do law enforcement, and that's the only way to do it. Bringing an extra 500 troops from other states is going to it's not going to de-escalate the situation at all.
Yeah, so Chris, when we think of the Guard as well, they're not controversial, not political. They respond to these snowstorms, other disasters, right. And usually people are happy to see them.
They're
welcome.
See them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So are you worried about recruitment efforts at all when you talk about getting more of these folks who are willing to go out and pause their own lives to serve other communities and other families?
Recruitment and retention. The Guard this year did meet their recruiting standards, but the last numbers that I had seen from over the summer showed a really worrying sign in retention rates. So I think in June, the Guard Bureau put out that about 63% of troops who were up for retention, meaning they would reenlist, had signed up. Now that's usually in the 80s.
Wow.
So we're very concerned, and we're going to keep an eye on the folks that the numbers that come out to see who's reenlisting. But the people who sign up for the National Guard, they don't want to be engaged in political stunts, right? They want to serve their communities. They do it out of a sense of mission and duty to their neighbors. And if they wanted to do federal law enforcement work, they would have done that. The job applications are there. Many of these people are qualified to do that, but they did. They are our neighbors. They go to our churches. Their kids are at our soccer games. We should be giving them every support that they need to do the work at home.
Hey, Chris, we had a rather unusual situation unfold where we were told by the governor of West Virginia that these two National Guardsmen had tragically lost their lives. And then 22 minutes later, we found out that was not the case. There were questions about their conditions, and we know now that they are in critical condition. That was a jolt, certainly to us, for those of us who traffic in facts and want to make sure that we give out correct information. But there were also questions about notifications. Is there a chance that family members might have been told that their loved ones had perished, only to then have to be told that actually that wasn't correct in that time frame?
I don't want to speculate on the notification process that had gone on. It seemed to me that this was rather quick. Obviously, National Guard units are pretty tight-knit. Many members of the National Guard came from the same towns, the same neighborhoods. They go to the same schools, so these people know each other quite well. So it would not be surprising to me that their units are doing everything that they can to ensure that families are getting the most accurate information as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and Chris, before we let you go, just another question here. I wanted to find out, in terms of seeing their relatives, their family members, I believe it was you who mentioned that a guardsman mentioned getting married not too long
Yeah.
ago. So how often are they cycled out? Do they get to go back home to see their relatives, or would these guardsmen have been stationed here since August without a chance to see their loved ones?
My understanding is the vast majority of these troops have been here since August.
Okay.
I have not seen any real rotation schedule that would indicate otherwise.
Well, Chris Purdy, we sure thank you for your time. We thank you for your service to our country that makes it possible for us to even have these kinds of conversations. And we are sure thinking of your National Guard brothers or sisters. So tonight we don't actually
Right,
know.
right.
We are thinking of these National Guardsmen and their family and your extended families, because we know this touches all of you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Chris,
All right, Chris,
thank you.
And at 6:00.